Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of GameGuru MAX live broadcast number 86. And before I comment, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me fine. Just checking my other screen, just to make sure that you can hear me loud and clear. The format will remain much the same, but we have switched around the technologies a little bit. This is the broadcast where we're not using Restream. We're going back to just YouTube in order to, in quotes, reduce the number of technical difficulties and hopefully in the future the delays on starting exactly 7 p.m. Okay, great, everyone can hear me. That's wonderful. And also next week we're going to slightly improve the presentation of the broadcast as well. And by that I mean we're going to distinctly split the broadcast into two sections. The first section will be a demo section where I will demonstrate something within the software, and then the second part will be the Q&A, the questions and answers section. Now this is sort of in line with what we've been doing over the last 80 or so broadcasts. We're just going to formalize it. So anyone who just wants to tune in and watch the demo, then you can just watch the first half. But if you're interested in sticking around for the Q&A, then you can do so. And obviously, if you're watching it later on YouTube, then you know when you hit the Q&A splash, it's really just questions and answers and listening to Lee talk a lot. This week, we're lucky to have at least two TGC team members ready and happy to answer your questions. You are certainly free to ask questions whilst I'm doing the demo, but obviously I won't be able to answer them, but sure you might be able to get answers during that. Any questions that the answers aren't forthcoming, one of my team members will just copy that question and paste it in once we start the Q&A. Or you could just wait until the Q&A starts and start asking your questions then, but I know a couple of you want to front load your questions into the live chat, and that's fine as well. So without ado, imagine animation of demo time. So we'll get all that ready for next week. Let's go straight into the software so I can demonstrate one of our new game demos, which will be in Friday's build if you're lucky enough to be a pre-order user. But before we get into that, just want to show you what you're passing through. We've updated the welcome screen to now it's called the GameGuru MAX Hub, and we've changed the way we display the initial demo games. So when you hover over them, you get a nice little video on each one, like so, like that. So you get a little bit of a look at what the demo is before you go into it, and then you can highlight the one you're interested in, and then you can go in and play the game. All the demo projects will have proper screens, so you won't just get it like a level, you're getting like a whole mini game project. This is the latest one that we've added to the build. It's called Trapped, authored by Synchromesh, which is really good. So I'm just going to play this demo for you, and I'm going to keep quiet for a bit and just go through the demo because there is quite a soundscape. So I think the sound levels are okay. I'm looking, I've got a bar on the other screen. So I'll just start and I'll glance over at the chat, and if the audio is too quiet, then just someone let me know and I can just crank up the volume a little bit on the game side. So I'll try and shut up, play the game, and let me know what you think at the end of it. I guess that's someone trying to get through the door. And I believe this door here, yeah, game complete. And I think perhaps what we'll do is make that door a little different, so you know it's definitely the exit. And if I was doing the full save standalone or the full play game from the storyboard, you'd actually get the game over screen, because it's only a one-level game demo at the moment, but I have been reliably informed that this will be expanded a little bit over time, so I'm looking forward to more episodes of that. So that was called Trapped. You'll be able to play that on Friday if you're a pre-order user, along with some other improvements to some demo projects that we've put out onto the, if we go back here, you'll actually see in the demo game section, this will populate. We actually have another 5 demos that I have on my computer, and so these will be added to the list. If we get 9, that'd be great, because it means it fills up this whole screen and you've got lots of lovely different games to play. So I should say demos. We're not really out to like create full AAA 10 hours of gameplay games. These are really just demos to demonstrate different techniques, different creation methods, and all the different kinds of things you can create with this version of GameGuru MAX for the early access one. But the one other thing I just want to show very quickly, it's something that Rick threw in and said, just show that because it's really cool. So this is something I literally knocked together 20 minutes ago, but I'm not showing any visual stuff. I just want to show you a new feature. So let's say you're dropping in a little village here, and let's say you've got another village, say, up there. Look what you can do now. If I double click on the floor, it goes straight to it. Same again, if I want to go back to that one, double click, straight there. So yes, you can still do all this moving around the camera or flying in the sky to get over to that mountain over there, but if I just double click on it, it goes straight to there. If I want to go to that mountain over there, it'll take me all the way over there. And if I want to go back to the little village, double click, straight to that location, or down to there. Much, much quicker way to navigate around a large level you might have created. So I'm looking forward to using that a lot. Saves me a lot of flight time in the levels that you're creating. So I won't dwell on creating levels in front of you. Maybe we can do that in the future. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate, our new demo. There will be definitely be another demo, or demos most likely, to show off next week. So hopefully I'll be able to play, perhaps even playthroughs of multiple demos, just to fill up the minutes. But I probably don't need to. I've just looked at the clock. We're already 10 minutes in. I didn't think that that demo would take 10 minutes. As it turned out, it did, which is great. That's exactly the sweet spot that I wanted to populate. So this first section of the broadcast, the demo or the showcase part, that's this part. The next part, so imagine an animation of Q&A. This is the part where I get to answer all of your lovely, lovely questions. And I'll probably have some sort of backdrop, so it's a nice backdrop, and then we can fit the chat into it, and it'll all look nice and lovely. And also something else that we're going to play around with, doing a sound pre-test on future broadcasts. Not quite figured that part out yet, but what it means is I don't have to keep asking you whether you can hear me every week, because we'll already have done that internally. So another benefit of having a larger team surrounding a product. So, Dave, if you can hear me, can you post a question just so I know where it starts? I also dare say lots of answers perhaps have come through, and I don't need to repeat those answers. If I read a question at the top and then the answer was further down, I'll just end up repeating the answer. So let's see if I can find a non-clement juror. Be great, Dave, if I knew what you called yourself in our chat, if indeed you were here. So until I find out, and to avoid wasting too much of your most precious time, I'm going to find a question from No. So the question I'm looking at is the one from ShadowFan82. Could you add a toon shade texture? Yeah, it's called cartoon shading. Well, we're not going to do that for the March release, but we do have a filter section in the editor which allows you to choose lots of different post-process effects, and I think perhaps toon could be one of them. So definitely put that on the issues board, and maybe point to some examples or some videos of games that did it very well, and then we'll look at it as in a feature request for the future. Question from Tom: when Max goes live on Steam, will we get weekly updates, or will we have to sign up for a beta on Steam for quicker updates? Yeah, we're not going to do weekly cascades like every Friday forever. Sometimes those Friday updates were quite inconvenient. Sometimes we wanted like 10 solid days to work on a thing and test it and make sure it's solid. And we had to interrupt that because we had to get something out on Friday, and that wasn't necessarily the best version we wanted to put out. So we've been keeping up with the Wednesday broadcasts and the Friday releases just because we're in development and we can do that. But after the March release, we're going to look at updates as when the update is ready, we'll put it out. That means it could be that the update is ready 3 days after the last update, or it could be 10 days. But we're going to pick it more based on a thing that we've completed, we've tested it, and we're ready to release it. And then we'll obviously let everybody know through the social feeds that update is available. And of course the software itself will tell you that an update is available. You click a button and it'll update it for you. So that's how it's going to work, and we'll sync updates both for Steam users and for anyone who's not using the Steam version, the non-Steam installer for GameGuru MAX. Those updates will go out simultaneously. So here's a question from, oh, Dave, haha, great. So when Dave posts a question, it's not his question. He's just got a lot of questions that have already been asked, and the ones that never got answered, I get to ask. So this, I apparently think, is the first one. Has the pause in gameplay when switching weapons been fixed? Yes. That's definitely not little. It's like a stutter that sometimes you got when you picked up a weapon. That stutter's gone for the most part. There is a residual edge case where someone says they can still get it to happen, but we've not been able to reproduce it. So still working through that conversation to find out if there's a way we can provoke it and see it. But it's certainly not stuttering for us, because we was able to reproduce that and fix it. Here's a question from Zach. Zach is another one of our helpers. Again, this won't be a question from him. This will be a question that was asked, and he's simply pasting it in here so I can answer it in a nice, orderly fashion. So the question was from Zorgo. Well, we do think this is needed and we'll be looking at it before we start RPG development. I think that's Zach's answers. I think we should have maybe a tag. If it's an answer, just stick the word answer, : and then I don't have to read through the entire thing before I realised it wasn't a question. So I'm just going to look for question marks now. Okay, Dave, thanks for that. Here's a question mark. AZ Graphics, is there a way to start the game without flashlight and later pick it up? Second part of the question, can we increase the intensity of the flashlight without affecting the whole gamma and ambient light? Yeah, great feature request. Just pop that in the issues board. For the merch EA, you always have the flashlight. It's permanently attached to your hand, and anytime you press the F key, you get the flashlight. But yeah, I do think it's important that you can have games where you discover the flashlight later on, and you can configure that flashlight to the kind of game that you want to create. But not for the merch EA. That will come afterwards, once we've created a torch, a flashlight, a torch. What would this say? Flashlight or torch? Flash torch? Yeah, an object you can collect, and once you've collected it, then you can press the F key. Here's a question from Retro Game Bloke. Are there any plans to add bushes and foliage that uses the tree system? There are plans, actually. We were going to add bushes, which was the sort of vegetation between grass and tree. We just realised, you know what, let's just get what we have working great. We will be reusing the tree system to do smaller trees / bushes, because we've already written it. We just need to provide more assets. And again, that'll be after March. But during that process, we'll also be looking at another request, which was, can I customize trees, grass, vegetation, bushes? Can I have my own art and put that in? Because as much as we'd like to provide a gazillion of them, it's just not going to happen. And you will want to put in your own stuff. So at the same time we'll look at bushes, we'll also look at customizing that palette of choices, so you can add your own if you've got an artistic persuasion. Synchro, I'm assuming that's not a question because there's no question mark at the end of it, so I'm just going to move straight along. This is from Smool. How's the optimization coming along? It's going great. It's going really great. We've already sped up the launch time, the time it takes to click test level, the speed of the in-game experience, the lower processing logic, the object rendering systems now using instancing, so that's a lot faster. You put 1,000 rocks in your scene, it's one draw call, or it tends to amount to one draw call, I should say, extremely efficient. So yeah, and we're not even finished, we're still working on optimization. Underway, we've got optimizations on the nav mesh, because that's actually, if you watch the progress bar when you're clicking test level, and it's a very intricate scene, a lot of that could be nav mesh, and we're attempting, in quotes, to multi-thread that whole process. So if you have, the nav mesh is already broken down into tiles, but then if you've got a 16-core system, that's 32 threads, it could be potentially 30 times faster to process all that nav mesh tile system. So watch out for that. Effectively, it means when you click test level, it happens very quickly, which is exactly what you want. Another question, this is from Fearless Wee. Are there any plans for major optimizations in terms of large open levels with large number of assets? Well, we're making great strides in that, as to the optimizations I've already mentioned, but the one that's not going to be in the March early access, but is definitely planned, is the optimization of texture handling. We're already handling the object's geometry with instancing and other clever tricks like that, and to some degree managing material use, so we can do a lot of texture and material reuse. But the actual idea that you don't want to hold your entire texture set for your level at once on video memory. What you want to do is stream it in as it's needed. So those very large levels, which might have 5 different tones in different areas on your one massive terrain, might use very different textures in each tone. And so as you get close to the tone, those textures are streamed in. It's basically a virtual texturing technique. We're already using it for terrain, but we want to extend that to the object system after March. So yeah, with all of these and all the other things that we're doing, large levels are now possible without having to have some sort of imposed limit on the amount of high resolution textures you can use. Here is a question. No, that's no question mark. Next one. Oh, Dave has got one. This is probably from the past. Will there be full controller support? Yes. Not for March Early Access. For March Early Access, you've got keyboard and mouse. But after March, we already have plans to do basic game controller support. And eventually when we do VR, then VR controller support as well, obviously. So yeah, we already have the code for control. We want to put in the UI. So not only do you have game controller support, but you can reconfigure those controls to that button does this and this button does that. We feel that's very important when we do introduce controller. So yeah, that's definitely on the cards. Look out for that one. Here's a question from Gustav. Can you please make us add Steam achievements to GameGuru games? Yeah, that's certainly on our list. I can't say in what order it's going to be done in, but we are looking at some good Steam integrations. I think I've already mentioned things like Workshop, and I think I look at previous broadcasts, I have mentioned the achievement system and others. But it's not something I can say that particular day or in that particular order. But it's definitely on our radar to make sure we have good Steam integration. Here's a question from Jareth. Is there any plans to implement a way that as creators we can add our own characters as enemies or allies using the GG Max characters AIs, or add your own weapons without having to recode in GG Max? Yeah, you actually have the character creator built into GameGuru MAX. So you go into the character creator, create your own characters, and you can set them as allies or neutrals or enemies, drop them into your level, and voila, you've created your own characters. And down the road in 2022, we'll be adding more body parts, so the combinations of characters you can create will increase over time as well. As to creating your own weapons, that's pretty much a dark art right now. We do have some ideas on how you'd be able to customize weapons, but for the March EA, the weapons that you get in the Max collection area, where all the weapons are, those are what you'll have. We will be adding more, as I say, down the road as sort of completed assets, but I think what you're talking about is being able to just build your own weapons. That won't be something out of the box. Certainly we'll provide templates and a guide. If you actually are interested, you can make your own weapons, but you're going to have to follow a guide and have some technical experience. I think far down the road, the idea of a full-blown weapons maker, it just sounds really cool. But I think that has to be put into some sort of priority against other things that might be more important. Okay, looking for a question mark. Here's one from John. Did you use SketchUp free or pro version? I think that was a question to Synchro. I think he did use SketchUp. That, just to elaborate on that, the room that you saw, and one of the reasons we've marked it as red in the demo games, is that those rooms, the corridors, all the layout, the archways set into the wall, I think that was all created in something called SketchUp and imported using the model importer into GameGuru MAX. Just to demonstrate another of the many features of MAX that you don't have to use the assets we've provided. You can create and import your own if you want to. But I'm sure Synchro can expand on that at his leisure. Here's a question Zach asks. This is probably from earlier in the posts. Will there be full controller support? Yes, there will be full controller support after March Early Access. Here's a question from Nomad Soul. Will SSAO, Screen Space Ambient Occlusion, be added? I think there is some screen space ambient occlusion in the Wicked engine, which is the graphics engine that we use in GameGuru MAX. If it is there, it's very highly likely we are going to expose it in the GameGuru MAX in short order. Not for March Early Access. Right now we're into the optimizations, the polishing, the finalizing, things like that. But once that's out the way and we have our new raft of features that we want to bring you after March, if it's already in the graphics engine, it should be a relatively small step to expose it so you can switch it on and off. Some people would also argue that you don't want SSA, or you want HBA or FX or some other hybrid version of screen space ambient occlusion. So what is screen space ambient occlusion? Well, it's the idea that you can add the subtle shadowing of creases of objects of things without having to pre-bake it. The GPU is so clever, it can calculate where those shadows ought to be and add them to the post-process section of your render. It's basically free high-resolution shadows for your entire scene. It's not always convincing. Sometimes it looks downright horrible. But yeah, the advances in screen space AO has been remarkable, and it's been around for at least, as far as I know, 10 years. So yeah, I'm sure there's some really fancy GPU techniques now, and we'll be exploring initially what we already have in our engine, and then perhaps how we can expand that to the new latest greatest technique that might be out there that you might want. So don't be fixated just on SSAO. Maybe there's a great hybrid out there we can use instead. So another question, this is from Marcos. Is there any way to put physics in a imported object so that it behaves according to the waves of the water? No, not for the March Early Access, but I know what you mean. It's buoyancy. And we actually had a fake buoyancy. In fact, we do have fake buoyancy in right now, but it doesn't respond to the shape of the object, simply its mass. So you drop in a big object in water, but you make the mass really low, it'll float. If you make the mass really high, as is it's heavy, it will sink to the bottom of that water. You have that, but what I'd like to see, and is not in at the moment, is taking the shape of that object. So if it was a raft, because of its shape, it might be quite heavy, but its spread, its displacement area is bigger, and so it would float. And that obviously means you can have the player stand on it and float down the river. So yeah, we have basic buoyancy. We're hoping to add more advanced buoyancy when we take a closer look at our physics system. And there's no guarantee we're going to stick with the same physics system as well. We're looking at each section iteratively over and over to make sure that what we've got is exactly what we want to deliver a modern game experience. And if our physics engine isn't cutting it, we'll replace it. Okay, looking for the next question in order. I think this is from ShadowFan82. In GameGuru MAX, can you make your own game menu yourself? Yeah, absolutely. The storyboard you just saw me go through, all in different screens. The splash, the title screen, the loading screen, the game won, game lost, the in-game screens where you can change sounds and graphics and save your game position and load your game position back in. All of those can be customized. You can change the graphics, you can move the buttons around. We've taken care of the functionality, but you can change the cosmetics, how it looks. Another question, this is from Joe True. Can you add more weapons when it officially releases on the Steam? Because at the moment the weapons are really low. I may, another question, I may add some drivable vehicles. Yeah, as I said before with the other weapons question, we will provide a guide which allows you to create your own weapons if you've got technical skills in that area, and we will be releasing more weapons in the future. But they take a long time to create. Remember, it's not just a case of making something that looks pretty. It has to animate convincingly. It has to have sounds. It has to be set up. It has to be balanced with the rest of all the other weapons, so it doesn't out of place when you drop it into your game and start wiping out every enemy in the game. Not to say it's impossible, it just takes a long time to create them. But we do have a plan and a mission to make sure we'll keep you furnished with weapons for the player and, of course, weapons for the allies and enemies as well. Okay, and in terms of drivable vehicles, no plans right now to do that. I know a lot of people want to see, especially these large terrains now, and you've put your road down, it's like, I'm not walking for 20 minutes. Can I just jump in a Jeep and get there in a tenth the time? So I know a lot of people want it. It's just there's other things we want to do, and driving vehicles is not at the top of that list. But certainly we want to do vehicles at some point. And Shadowfan also asked, could you make a third-person platformer? No, not in GameGuru MAX early access version. Maybe way down the road there might be a possibility of third-person, but I'm pushing it right out there. And I'll tell you why. We really want to conquer that first-person experience. First-person shooters, RPG, first-person puzzles. First-person, obviously, when you're in virtual reality, it's all first-person. So that's kind of where we're going to centre our attention. If you're really into platformers and third-person and 2D games and stuff like that, there's plenty of great tools out there to explore. But if you're interested in that first-person experience, then stick with GameGuru MAX because we've got a lot of stuff on the way. Okay, next question is from Stormy. This is a legacy channel. Because optimization is coming along, can more of the Wicked engine graphic features be added? Not for the March EA. We've entered that phase of polish and refinement and getting it ready for a solid EA product at the end of March. But once that's done and we're allowed to experiment a little more and bring in some newfangled features of the graphics engine, yeah, you'll start to see that perhaps in the form of mini or slightly larger updates being released after the end of March. So definitely keep an eye out for those, because if they're available, all we got to do is basically switch them on and add a bit of UI in front. Question from, is it a question? Yes, from Zargo33. Is it possible to add buttons in storyboard editor that you put in different levels? For example, difficulty button, easy launch in the levels with less enemies, hard. Yeah, I see what you mean. So you get to control the difficulty curve as part of your own game, rather than you setting it up ahead of time and only having one difficulty curve. We do have actually modifiers that are in the engine right now that we use to modulate difficulty on a global level, so it should be relatively easy to expose that. And I assume you mean putting it into the in-game menu. So you've got your title screen, you've got your load save, you've got your exit, but then there's another one, set game difficulty, easy, medium and hard, and then that could control a global modifier for enemy strengths, weapon damage, things like that. Add that to the issues board as a feature request. I don't want to forget that suggestion, but it's a great one, and I think once we've got everything else right, it's like, there's something missing on our menu, and it will probably be that. So yeah, great idea. Next question is from, just getting past all them exclamation marks. I think 3 exclamation marks is a sin, so I don't know what to say about 50 exclamation marks. Is probably an old question posted in from Dave. Thank you very much. Will the RPG genre have an NPC dialogue system? Of course. In fact, isn't that one of the most fundamental aspects of RPG, telling a story and having a complicated character development and narrative? So yeah, we're going to really go to town on not just making it powerful, but easy to use and to construct dialogues without, having to code or do complicated scripts. Should be as easy almost as drag and drop, type in some text, press a button, et voila, you've got interesting characters in your game. So yeah, tune in more on that once we start revealing little sneak peeks about our RPG work. Another question, is this a question? No question mark. Looking Glass. Graphics, how can other developers contribute to help along with the pipeline. Sorry, Looking Glass, I'm going to have to read that one again. How can other developers contribute to help along with the pipeline? All right, yeah. Well, obviously you can create assets, you can write scripts that you see in GameGuru MAX as behaviors. In fact, that's already happening right now. And in fact, a lot of these demos are created by third-party contributors that we haven't written. They were submitted, a lot of them from the recent competition we ran. And they don't just come with a nice fancy level, they come with custom media, custom scripts, interesting new ways of doing things, pushing actually our engine, say, you know what, I just need this little extra feature before my demo is complete, and introducing those as well. So those are certainly some ways in which you can add to the pipeline, and eventually those really cool extra features end up into the main product. I don't think there's any short-term plans to open source GameGuru MAX's code. But yeah, way down in the future, there may be a possibility we open up a section of C++, so then you can go in and actually add core features that will actually exhibit inside the game engine. But for now, yeah, as I said, it's custom art, it's sounds and music and scripts and things of that ilk. Okay, who's got a question for old Lee? DLS Lee, will you be making win zones also portals, as on where a character ends up, not just to the start menu? Can you be able to carry over all information, as in level weapons? Right, in translation, I think this means can I actually go through a portal, arrive at another level with all the stuff that I have, my weapons, my stats, etc. Then jump through a second portal and get back to the first level, but maybe in a different location. That's not in the March EA version, but it's a great idea, and I think it is kind of essential that we get an element of that working, because that's actually what happens when you leave level 1 and Sturbo takes you to level 3. You need to keep all your weapons and your stats and everything like that. And then when you finish level 3, maybe you want to go back to level 1. So, you know, having progressed how many weapons that you've got in your arsenal and all your stats, etc. So that will already be in the engine. But in terms of this idea of a portal, we already have that with the win zone. So go check out the win zone. But I think we can actually elaborate on that and make it a little bit more interesting and maybe a bit more intuitive as well. So if you do, having looked at the win zone, you've got any more questions, please do post that either as an issues board request, or just go to our forums and ask some questions there. A lot of people happy to help answer those. So question. I was hoping to answer all the questions today, but they're coming in thick and fast, which is fine. This is from Jareth. Okay, so looking for the question. Okay, into the CC folder, would that allow me to use my own helmet sound? Right, so adding in those character parts into the character parts folders, yes, they would show up in the character creator, and then you could add them to the character and then they'd be in your game. Thing is, creating those body parts is actually quite a sophisticated series of steps. Good news is we are going to provide a guide and some template files which show you how to do that properly with the correct rigging and the correct scale and size and the correct naming conventions. And then yes, you'll be able to drop those into a folder, run GameGuru MAX, and now you've got your own character body parts. We'll have to work out a system after March where they don't interfere with the official collection of body parts, otherwise things start getting overwritten. But that was always our intention, to open up every one of these sections so custom material can come in and be added to your game experience, because there's only so much you'll be able to do with stock assets. Looks like a follow-up question. Into the folder as a PNG, like the rest of the things the folder would allow me to make a Stormtrooper AI. Yeah, see previous answer, all that kind of stuff. The models, the textures, even to some degree the settings, and there's some internal things that go on with the character creator. But yeah, you'll be able to customize all that so you can get your art into your game. Question mark from Retro Game Blog. Are effects like foam and sea spray along the shore what possible for the future? Yeah, the answer's in the question. For the March EA, we only just have the wave. So you can see the water lap on a nice, gentle, sandy shore, but there isn't all of that lovely watery, ripply, foamy stuff that you might expect in a modern game. But after March, we are looking at that as part of an overall improvement in basically the water aspects of your game levels. So that's things like swimming, and more impressive ripples and splashes, buoyancy, all the things you'd associate with really good water simulation and visual effects, lumping all that in a nice big bag, and we'll tackle it seriously and properly. So yeah, look out for much more impressive ocean and river edges as we work on water after March. Another question from, first question I think from Matches Malone. Will we be able, a great name by the way, will we be able to include things like head bobbing? I don't know. Is that an FPS term? I don't know what that is. Certainly you can crouch and stand up and crouch and stand up very quickly. That's technically bobbing your head in the first person perspective. But please elaborate if that answer was not sufficient. This is a question from Umi. Will Max be able to handle 4K textures? High polygon models? Already can, already is. A lot of our textures are already 4K, and a lot of our models are, by definition of wanting to make all our assets really cool for GameGuru MAX, high polygon. And so, yeah, check out GameGuru MAX pre-order if you've not already got it. Check out the demo when we release. I think we're releasing the demo in April sometime. Or go onto Steam or go onto our website and buy it when it gets released, and check out the high resolution textures and high polygon models for yourself. Smiley face. Okay, looking for the next question, and that is from Skinky. Can we use vehicles and other objects as characters with weapons? Yeah, I suppose if you could get a vehicle and then pretend it's a character and have it move around, like following paths and things, and then give the vehicle sort of a weapon that's attached to some hand limb, it would be a Frankenstein monster of a creation. And if you've got all the appropriate skills, yes, you could create the super hybrid vehicle character thing. Certainly not something we're going to officially support for March Early Access. But please, if you do manage to create something so horrific, let us know, because we'd like to show it in a future broadcast. Okay, here's a question. Is it a question? Yes, here's a question from Scooby. Do all the lure commands from Classic work in Max? Flashlight disable, HUD disable, terrain disable, sprite commands? No. Not all commands from Classic are even relevant in Max. There's some commands that interact with systems that we've entirely replaced, such as the old AI system. That's all gone. So all them commands don't make sense in the new world of Max, where we have all sort of new AI and new commands to support those. A lot of things will work. It's really a case of your mileage may vary. Just try them out. But yeah, in fact, if the flashlight disable, and I don't see any reason why it can't, because remember, a lot of the underlying game engine code is inherited from Classic and may still be there. I haven't personally tried it, but yeah, you could write a script at the start of level 1 that disables the flashlight and then re-enables it later when you collect an object. But again, you're leaving this sort of territory of easy to use, anyone can do this. You're going into the realms of scripting, of creating your own objects, of creating that mechanic yourself, and that's something a lot of people just won't be able to do in, say, the first week of making their first game. But it's certainly possible, just as we would be able to do it with the same set of tools. Looks like there's another question buried in here. No, that's just 4 question marks. Okay, looking for a question, and it's from 3Com. Do you remember alt texture? Yeah, alt texture is the ability to, during the game, switch the texture of an object. So you could have a character that's clean, and then you could explode a barrel nearby, and then when the smoke clears, the character's now scorched from head to toe, because you pre-prepared that texture and just flick the texture at the last minute. It's currently not a feature of GameGuru MAX, but it's certainly buried in our game engine, and I do think it will make a reoccurrence. I just thought it was a little bit of a hacky, developer-y feature, and I think we could do it better. I think we could do it, well, why just have one texture? Why can't we have a series of stages from clean to slightly dirty to a bit more dirty to completely scorched to practically ripped to pieces, and have control of that within not just scripting, but something that anyone can do just by clicking up a piece of logic, adding a value, et voila. So not for merch, just make it clear, but the alt texture feature has not been forgotten. Okay, next question. This is probably from, no, there was no question marks there, these exclamation marks.
We got to the last question before the next one. This is from Tom. Will the AI enemies be able to hide, sneak, or get behind cover when attacking you?
The enemies, no, they can't really hide. They can run off, go back to their starting position. They can't really sneak. They can walk and run, but I wouldn't call them sneaky. And can they get behind cover? No, not at the moment. I'm looking at cover, but there's lots of different ways to implement it. Right now, the enemies essentially are aggressive. They're aggressive either standing back from you, they're aggressive and flanking you, or they're aggressive and running up towards you and trying to punch your lights out. So they're all super aggressive. There is no sneaking and hiding with these guys right now. But I do see it as a critical element of AI. And so certainly the cover, seeking cover, will probably be the first of those things that I'm going to look at adding into AI, not just for AIs for enemies, but also for allies as well. Because they effectively use the same logic, they just change the target. So another question's come in, this is from Luke in Glass. Will the new version be able to bring in the assets from previous versions without having to drag and drop the folders? Yeah, you'll still have to, if you want to grab assets from GameGuru Classic or from your own collections or elsewhere, you're going to have to drag them in manually, drop them into a folder structure. Your mileage may vary as to how compatible those different media types are, because none of them were written for Max. They were all written for Classic or other things, and so dropping them in, seeing if they work, that's the only the way you're going to find out if you can make use of those things. But there isn't going to be some magic bullet which just automatically converts everything into, eventually that will probably be the model importer, some sort of batch process model importer feature where you can just point it at a lot of assets and say, not only do I want them, I want you to convert them so they're Max compatible. But that's way after March. But it's certainly something I've been thinking about. Question from KC Productions. Can we have the characters lean to the right and left during aiming and shooting? Behind the wall you want to shoot the enemy. Yeah, that would be an integral animation set when they seek cover. Because as soon as they run up to a tree and hide behind it, they want to narrow their profile so they don't have their arms shot off. But then at some point they want to kind of lean round the tree and take a pop shot. So I'll need the animations for that, and obviously I first need to work out the best way for enemies and allies to detect cover. But yeah, the leaning left and right is kind of be part and parcel of that additional AI experience. Another question, this is from Lucas. My question has been ignored. Oh, the pain. Just kidding. Another time. Well, you could have actually asked your question now instead of saying, I had a question, but I'm not telling you what it is now. Here's a question from No Name. Where is the lower API relevant? Where is the lower API relevant to Max? Well, we are using Lua. Lua is the underlying programming language that our scripting system is based on. Just to emphasize, you don't need to script to make games in GameGuru MAX. It's an optional extra. And with the addition of the visual logic system and the behavior editor, we've pushed that requirement even further into the distance. Only when you really have to do you need to go in and do actual code scripting stuff. And we are using the Lua system for that. But the Lua system that we started with has been significantly augmented with a lot of commands that we've added in order to do all the things that you want to do in your game. So if you're interested in that and you do have a copy of GameGuru MAX, go into the script bank global.lua and go to the bottom of that file. You'll see all the commands that we've added on top of the bare bones Lua system. Okay, looking for... oh, I've just got a commandment from Rick V. Hey Lee, time to wrap things up. So I'm afraid that is the last of the questions being answered today. Just checking out the clock. Yeah, I said I'd do 30 minutes of questions. I think I did that and then some. So I hope you enjoyed this rather extended Q&A session. Let me know if it is too long or you would have liked me to have carried on. We're making it a separate section of the broadcast now where you got this in its own right, a Q&A section. So let me know what you think of it this week and we'll improve the format and clean it up, maybe add a few extra presentations for our next Wednesday broadcast, which will be at the usual new time of 7 p.m. GMT. Thank you very much to my teammates who helped answer and collaborate in today's live chat. And if you missed some of this, we'll be putting it on our YouTube channel later on. And you'll also find a link in the GameGuru forums as well. So thanks very much for your attention and your patience, and I shall be back with you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. GMT. So until then, I shall say goodbye.